Hi, I'm Greg Jeffers. We've been a little busy around here at Free Song Farm, and so I've been away from YouTube for a while. Wanted to share with you some of the things that we've got going on. My hands are not clenching.
Good girl. Good girl. Let's do a whoa. Whoa. We haven't got the whoa yet, but we're working on it.
So now that the first cut of hay is in the barn and next year's firewood has been cut, split, and stacked, we have time to talk to YouTube again. Please watch these clips.
So in the US, there's a lot of women right now hoping to become a mother who are aged, 35 to early 40s. And just statistically, you just look at the chances are not high. I mean, that's one other fact. Just I love sharing if I can.
Please. Yeah.
That in every country except one, and the one is Israel, I'll talk about in a moment. In every country I've looked at, women turning 30 without a child only have a 50-50 chance of ever becoming a mother.
If you've been reading my stuff, my books, or watching any of my interviews or videos over the years, you'll know that I don't believe that there are any macro solutions to anything. So whatever the talking heads or the politicians or the policymakers or the big shots are talking about, they're just wasting their breath. The solution is in the hands of the individual. And in this case, we have a terrible fertility problem. We are literally running out of children. No, not completely out of children, but the rate of childlessness is historically, it's inconceivable. And we got here through very, very strange ways.
What we're not aware of, for whatever reason, is that women's fertility, A, falls much faster than expected, that there's a lot of variability in it. Some women are very fertile to 40 or older. Some lose their fertility by age 30. So we don't know about that variation out there, therefore the risk.
Now, you'll see this often. Human beings like to work in very round numbers. Age 30, 50% of women are no longer fertile. Age 40, age 50. What about age 28? If women are, 50% of women are incapable of bearing children or incapable of becoming pregnant after age 30, then what percentage is it at 29? is it at 28? It's not 0 and it's not 100%. My larger point is that this researcher correctly points out that most people are unaware that at 30, half of women can no longer produce a child. But what he's not mentioning is that at 28, it's probably 30 to 40%. That fertility declines pretty badly after the age of 25 or so. I would posit, without any supporting research, that, or what I should say, given without proof, that when you see your first wrinkle or your first gray hair, it's not just happening on your skin and in your hair. It's also happening in your body and to your fertility. And Botox and hair dye are not youth and fertility.
Okay, at the beginning, you mentioned a bunch of other contributing factors, prosperity being one of them. What were the other elements?
Gender equality and education are typically the other two.
Run us through those.
Well, gender equality, when it is often specifically female education.
Now you'll notice that this politically correct and excitable little fellow immediately bails out on his first claim of gender equality and focuses correctly in on female education.
When women begin to have a choice as to what they do and can participate in the economy, I don't think that it's that they're choosing not to have kids. I think that is a misunderstanding of what we're seeing in the data. I think it's that they prioritize economic stability and basically having their life in order before they decide to start having kids. But the way our economic system is structured, people often don't really feel they have their life in order till their mid-30s or 40s. And at that time, they can no longer have kids. And so I think that is why. It is not that women are choosing jobs over kids. It's that they're choosing jobs then kids, and their biological clocks run out.
It's a complicated issue, I'll grant you that. But these interviewees, and especially the people who value their channels and not being censored by YouTube and Google, are terrified to talk about some of the really big issues, the really big inputs that are preventing women.
Pretty much everyone who's optimizing for status or personal pleasure is going to be culled from the gene pool. And any cultural group that can't motivate people to optimize for something else is going to be removed from the system. And that is going to fundamentally change what it means to be human.
Yes, indeed. The current educational system was evolved during a time of male-only education, really, and it evolved around the male window of fertility. It did not take into consideration the female window of fertility. So if you wanted your family to die out, you had only 2 daughters, your best thing to do would be to send them to law school. By the time they graduated at 28 or so, 40% of them would be infertile. And by the time they got their career established, essentially all of them would be infertile. Now, the law school example is an easy fix. Simply don't require undergraduate degrees to attend law school. And women will graduate at 21 and have a few years to get their act together, to get their career on track, and begin having children at 24 or 25. But the greater point still stands. We need to accept the fact that women are not fertile until 40, that they run into serious fertility problems in their late 20s, and that the socioeconomic system is stacked against our daughters producing grandchildren for us. Because, again, I'm unconcerned with the macro issue. I don't care about the economy. I don't care about the demographics. What bothers me about this issue is that people will unwittingly end their family line. They're not understanding that the system is there to harm them, or the system has now evolved to harm them. And it's time that we took a hard look at this.
But when you optimize around the things that give you happiness when you were a teenager and your whole society tells you to optimize around those things, you hit middle age And you're like, why doesn't anything really make me happy anymore? Why aren't video games making me happy anymore? Why aren't the things I used to do? Why does these status games not make me happy anymore? And it's because your culture used to tell you, hey, you need to move on to your next stage of life, but you don't have that culture anymore because you're in this bubble.
Yes, indeed. We no longer have a culture anymore. We no longer raise our children. Our schools do. And our schools, our elementary schools and high schools and colleges, were seized by a certain political class well, they don't produce many children, so they need your children in order to exist in the future. And that's where the battle is. Now, there are some inconsistencies here, some cognitive dissonance. The political class, and it was a conspiracy. They got together at the women's studies programs back in the 80s and 90s and set forth these people into the educational system and healthcare, but I'm going to leave healthcare out of this today, and human resources. They identified chokeholds in the system, and they were good at it. And now they've seized control. And by the way, they have the churches too. It was an impressive takeover of the culture. But here's where the cognitive dissonance comes in. They wanted to seize your children, but at the same time, they helped lower your fertility. Their fertility almost doesn't exist. They're producing somewhere between, 0.3 to 0.5 children per woman. At that rate, you go extinct within a generation or two. And somehow that spread over, that input spread into the other demographic, into our demographic. And now our women are producing less than 2 children per woman.
So it's not the pill, or the pill may have contributed, let's say.
Yeah.
So when we talk about the cultural developments that are a product of urbanization and whatever, so what's going on, Alex? Because there's part of me that thinks that when we delve into this issue, we're going to find a lot of things we don't like pretty quickly in terms of, the correlation between prosperity and the number of children people have. Do we need to be poorer so that we start reproducing? Is it about women's liberation? Have we liberated women too far? Like, that would be a question some people ask. I'm not saying I'm asking it, but people will start to ask all of these questions.
Well, young man, yes, people will start to ask these kinds of questions. And they might actually start using different words to describe what has happened. You're using the term liberation. I would use the term disembedded. We didn't necessarily liberate women from domesticity or from family life as much as we disembedded them and placed them in the corporate world.
I've been talking to a lot of people at the conference about it, like Louise Perry. She's like, it's all about prosperity. You talk to Eric Kaufman, he'll say, well, it's about religion, and he's not religious, but religious communities reproduce and non-religious basically don't. Like, where do you see the crucial piece of this?
Well, it's my consistent observation that whenever members of the left are confronted with something that they can't explain or it doesn't fit into the narrative, they talk it to death. They'll blame it on religion, they'll blame it on jobs. We don't know exactly what the problem is here, but we need to have an open discussion about it. And, well, listen to this clip by that excitable young fellow. I think he's got it right.
And that the truth is what is correct is whatever ends up working in the long term for human civilization, because nothing is really working right now. And so I just encourage people to, if they think I can't be a mom and in the boardroom, I would encourage you to rethink the way you're structuring your family, rethink the way you're structuring finding a partner.
Well, whatever works is what is correct. What a tautology. Anyway, essentially that's it. All the huffing and puffing and talking it to death that the left is going to do because they can't face the truth of it. There was a recent symposium or gathering of female intellectuals. Mary Harrington was there, Louise Perry was there, and they were talking about the future of feminism. There is no future in feminism. None. Zero. If you're having 0.2 or 0.3 children per woman, you're extinct in a generation. Goodbye. You no longer matter. You're out of the gene pool. And that's what's happening. In my universe I spent a career on Wall Street. In my universe, I've got endless numbers of friends who married very late in life and had a single child in their 30s or 40s. That's just not going to do it. Yes, they were all Yale and Georgetown and Harvard educated lawyers and doctors and Indian chiefs, and they had no children. I can tell you where that's going to lead.
And is the answer to get off the internet? Just sorry.
Yeah,
very
go.
quick. Is that the only answer? Because I don't think we are going to get off the internet.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Like, to be honest, with all these technologies, like, are we going to get off the pill? Are we going to, get off of the Industrial Revolution? Yeah, it's the toothpaste meets tube type situation, because we need it. I mean, we both make our living off broadcasting on the internet. I want to read the comments, see what people are talking about. I want to see who the guests are. I'm kind of stuck in it in a way. The space we're in with all these technologies and all this stuff that's really changed in the last few hundred years is really good and gives like insane returns to a very small percent of people. You see this everywhere, from dating markets, from the economy. There are a few people who are very well placed in terms of being like very high IQ, high conscientiousness, low neuroticism type people who can just take this stuff and just like plug into it like robotically and just, make the most money, get the best partner, things like that. And then that works out for them. For the other people, this is essentially like predatory. The fact that this is all just like completely, very like, build your own adventure, non-paternalistic, we don't judge type stuff. But it is really, it's quite aggressive for the people who are just not equipped to deal with it. So it's coming for you. Like, you're not, you might say you're going to plug into the AI and become like a Superman, but you're not a Superman yet. You've, even with your high IQ type stuff, it'll get you. Like, one of these traps will get you eventually. And, it's, for now it's okay that it's just kind of like consuming the plebs and whatever. But it's coming. It's coming to a theater near you.
Well, that's a painful but accurate assessment. The world is what it is, and there's a distribution of cognitive ability, and the people in the top 2%, as she mentioned, the people of high IQ, high conscientiousness, and low neuroticism can plug right into this and benefit wildly. And that's about 2% of the population. Everybody else, well, they get taken advantage of. And you see this most prominently in this idea that is being sold to the average person, especially the average woman, that she has a career. No. The top 2%, maybe up to the top 5% of people have a career. They get to work at NASA or some think tank in Washington or some hedge fund or Wall Street investment bank, and everybody else has a job. They're school teachers, they're nurses, they're therapists and other parasitic jobs. And they just go to work 9 to 5 and nothing really changes over the course of their 30 or 40 year job cycle. It's not a career, it's a job. Now, these nice people on YouTube don't want to talk about anything that might offend someone in big tech and get them censored. Like the fact that they don't know, that they'll point to nefarious and unspecific inputs that are causing this high level of childlessness. And I think it's something much more nefarious. I think there was an absolute plan to convince young women to put off childbearing, having children, until after their fertility window has closed. Because once a woman is childless, you've got a customer, a political customer for life. Just as I think that encouraging women to have abortions or encouraging them to maintain obesity rather than deal with the health issues of being obese, these also buy obesity and having an abortion, these also buy political customers for life. You see, one of the main tenets of our belief system, of Quakerism, or should I say of American Quakerism, my version of Quakerism, is the complete and utter and radical rejection of self-destruction. We don't spend a lot of time telling people what to do because most people can figure that out. But really encouraging people to not harm themselves. Now, what's the most harmful thing you can do to yourself? Well, you could end your family line by refusing to have children before your fertility window closes. You could abort children and become a childless woman. You could be obese and be diabetic and require amputations. Now, all this will make certain food manufacturers and certain big pharma companies very happy, but they are terrible for the individual, and that runs against everything that we believe in, because we believe in the radical rejection of self-destruction. Here's Dr. Sunil Dan talking about processed foods. I hope you'll follow his channel. I think this man is wonderful.
And let me be very clear on this, and I would bet my entire career on this. Ultra-processed foods are the biggest mass casualty event in human history. Let me repeat, they are the biggest mass casualty event in human history. When you consider the hundreds of millions of people who are getting diseases, that are getting sick, who are dying early because of ultra-processed foods, and nobody seems to be doing anything about it. This, in my opinion, is a slow mass murder.
So what the heck does processed food, obesity, and childlessness have to do with each other? Well, a great deal, I'm afraid. You see, family life is centered around the table where the family gathers to eat. And the only way that we can maintain a system of dragging, or let me use my better word here, disembedding women from the family and from domesticity is with processed foods. Otherwise, what would we eat? We're either eating whole foods prepared at home, or we're eating processed foods prepared in a factory. If mom is working, or not a mom yet, is working, in a real career, 8 to 6, plus commuting from 7 to 8 and commuting 6 to 7 to get back home, there is no time for preparing food. And so your life revolves around packaged and processed foods. And that's why we look the way we do, and the reason we have these metabolic illnesses the way we do. If we were eating properly, if our family life centered around the table and the health and well-being of the members of the family, and the thinking was that the health begins at what we put into our bodies, well, that wouldn't help the advertisers very much now, would it? Who are our big advertisers? Sugary beverages company, hamburger companies, and big pharma. You will not see any channel like mine who criticize this getting monetized. We will be demonetized. The advertisers control the media. So the current obesity epidemic and the future mass casualty event that Dr. Dunn was talking about, and the childless epidemic are integral parts of the problem. They may not be the only problem, but I think they're at the very top of it, very top of the list of the things that contributes to childlessness. We have moved cooking and eating out of the home, making us obese, separating us from our partners, separating us from the idea that we should have children. And now what do we have? We have a population of childless and obese and angry people wondering where it all went wrong. But let's not worry about this as a macro problem. This is an individual problem that you can solve individually and quite easily. You don't have to jump off the bridge that everybody else is running down and jumping off of. You can do your own thing. It requires discipline. It requires the complete and utter rejection of self-destruction, but it can be done, and the future is very bright for the people who participate in it. And the people who don't have children are not invested in the future of humanity. Anyway, that's enough for me today. Thank you. I'm Greg Jeffers for the American Quaker Friends Church.